Welcome to the Combat Zone. He's Joseph, I'm Nick, and this is the show where the only thing the enemy has to say is run away, abandon ship, and bail out.
That's a great introduction, Nick. You finally got it first time.
Well, you know, it's like a blind hog. They find an acorn once in a while.
Absolutely. So before we go any further, Nick, let's just make sure that everybody remembers that starting May 16th, which is next Wednesday, we're going to be live. And every Wednesday night after that, from 9 till 11 Eastern
Wednesday
time.
nights, 9 to 11 Eastern Daylight Savings Time.
Eastern Daylight. Well, it'll be Eastern
time.
Standard
Let's just call
time
it Eastern Time.
when the time changes.
Then we don't have to worry about the time change.
Right.
But yes, because we have an international audience, not just those in our local area. And I'm really excited about this. I've been looking to get back to a live show for a while, and having you on board raises the IQ about 200%. Just by having you in the studio. So that's great. People have somebody intelligent to listen to. But we've got all kinds of stuff. And we'll be able to take phone calls. We'll be able to take information from Facebook. So if you've got comments, emails, we're trying to be as open to communication as possible, any way that you can think of. Even carrier pigeon. We'll leave the window open. So if you send a carrier pigeon, we'll get the carrier pigeon. Excuse me. Yes, carrier pigeon. I was going to say Raven because I'm thinking Game of Thrones, but
I've never seen an episode of Game of Thrones.
I binged on it.
Did you?
Yes, I did.
I've heard nothing but good things about it, but I just couldn't get into it.
The only gripe I have is they intertwined the plot with all the sexual nonsense. Like, you know, in the old days, if they wanted to talk about somebody going off to have an affair with another guy's wife or whatever, they would hint at it, right? You'd see them sneak off somewhere, or maybe you'd see them close the bedroom door. You know what was going on. You didn't have to see the graphic stuff, but today it's right in your face, and you can't not watch it because they're talking about the plot in the middle of it all. And if you want to stay on top of what's going on, you have to sit through it, and It's really annoying. But it was at its worst in season 1, and then it got a lot better as the show goes on. And I'm an addict. I just can't wait for the next season.
They probably got feedback expressing exactly what you just said.
I hope so.
And that's why they probably toned things down. But in fairness, I can't say good things or bad things about it because I have not seen a single episode. Do you know what I also haven't seen a single episode of? Friends.
You're not missing much.
Friends. Everybody, it was all the rage.
Yep.
Never saw an episode.
I've never been into those kinds of shows like Cheers when it was on. I never watched any of that. I never watched Friends. We've watched almost every episode about 4 or 5 times of Last Man Standing. Now, there's a reason for that. I like Tim Allen. I like his comedy. I like his just as a person. I like him. But I have at home. My sister has a closed head injury. She lives with us, so to keep her entertained during the day, we'll put on Netflix, and she likes about 3 shows. The Musketeers, which I've now seen by osmosis, which I think is a great series, about 6 times. So I know every character, every plot, every line, and it's getting to the point where it's painful now. But she likes it, so I'm not going to say no to her. Then there's Downton Abbey, and then there's Last Man Standing. Those are the 3 things that keep her occupied.
Yeah, we're right in the middle of watching on Netflix Last Man Standing.
It's a great show.
We weren't aware of it when it was on air,
right?
And we're enjoying it thoroughly. It's really fun.
It is a great, well written show.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yep.
It's the jokes are not cheap. The conversation is not pedestrian. It's just very well done all the way around, and it's funny. But not over the top funny.
You know what? It's just because I know we didn't. This isn't a comedy. Or this isn't a TV analysis show, but just one more I'll throw out there. One of the other shows that she's just dove right into was Hogans Heroes.
Oh.
And you know what? It's corny. It's just...
That's great.
But it's so well written.
I loved Hogans Heroes.
So did I. And all the characters in it were unique and well fleshed out. And everybody from Colonel Hogan, I'll never forget one line as he's leaving Clink's office at the end of an episode. He says, "Where are you going?" He said, "Well, I got to get out of here. Somebody's got to warm up the escape helicopter." This is in 1945. They didn't have. I mean, they had helicopters, but that didn't come around until the Korean War.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of funny, those little lines like that.
Okay, I'm just going to say this, and then we have to get on with the topics that we wanted to talk about today. But if we're going to give a shout out to Hogans Heroes, we have to give a shout out to Get Smart. The best.
The phone in this shoe. Who could forget?
I know. No, Get Smart. I mean, it was the corniest, stupidest show ever thought of. Okay,
well,
in my
Gilligan's
judgment,
Island, but...
and fun. It was so funny.
It didn't
when I watch reruns, and the funny thing is, it's the same gag jokes all the time, right?
Of course,
over and over and over again, episode after
you
episode.
Laugh at everyone.
You laugh every one, almost because they're repeating it.
Yeah, because you get to know it, and it's almost like when you go back and watch an old series like that, it's like you're inviting an old friend back into the family. Okay, like my kids do not understand, they cannot stand an old show, a very old show I used to watch as a kid called Speed Racer. It's anime art out of the early 1960s that they turned into an English series and played in North America. And I remember Saturday mornings at 8 o'clock, I was in my pajamas sitting in front of the TV watching, at 8 years old, my hero, Speed Racer, and his car, the Mach 5. But we're doing it. We're going off the rails here.
Okay. Since this is the combat zone,
yes,
we have to open the first real topic we have to talk about is Grandma Maxine Thompson
oh my God.
in Philadelphia, 70 years
story.
old, and she has an intruder breaking into her house, and so she yells at this guy several times, "Go away, stop trying to get in my door.
Get off my door.
Get lost."
Yep.
And the guy doesn't listen. So she wanders over to her bedside table, I guess, opens up the drawer, pulls out her gun, and goes down and starts shooting.
And she shoots the guy.
And she shoots the guy. Well, apparently once the gunplay started, he apparently turned tail and ran, and she went out on the porch and kept shooting at him.
And she nailed him in the arm.
Right.
And so what does the rocket science do? He goes to a car wash, calls the cops, and said, "I've been shot." I'm thinking, no kidding, Ace. The cops show up, assess the situation, arrest him. And Maxine, the lady's name is Maxine Thompson, 70-year-old. I call her Grandma Dynamite because you don't mess with this old lady. And to all of you anti-gun nuts out there who say, "Well, what do you need a gun for?" This is why. When somebody's coming through your dining room window at 3 o'clock in the morning, you want a gun, because what would have happened, we'll never know, if she hadn't had that pistol.
Well, clearly this guy was not intimidated by her shouting through the door. So he was not just going in there to try to sneak around and find some jewelry
wasn't looking
somewhere.
for the flatware.
That's it. So Grandma Maxine, this is for you.
You gotcha. Standing ovation. Love it. And her quote at the end of the story, "Stay the hell out of other people's houses."
That's it. So all you criminals out there, not in Canada, of course, in Canada,
Come on in, they're sleeping.
Well, it's it's if you have to do, listen, when they're at the door banging trying to get in the door, the warning you have to give them in Canada is, if you don't go, I'm going to go get my gun, and then I'm going to go unlock the ammunition, if I can find it, and let me get the key to the locker. And
don't move. Stand right there while I jack 5 rounds in this five-round clip bolt-action rifle and hope I hit you in the dark. So you just, oh, darn it, the keys are in the car. You just stay right there now. Don't come through that door till I'm ready.
Yeah.
That kind of logic.
It's crazy. Look, it's funny. I don't own guns. I grew up with guns, but I haven't got any. I don't have a particular desire to have any guns. But I just don't understand the people who just won't accept that people like to have guns. It's not just a farm tool. I mean, I've heard this argument over and over again. They would, well, it's just a tool, and farmers have to have their tools and that. But you know what? I don't care whether it's a tool or not. Who do I? If I don't want to own a gun, who am I to say that other people shouldn't own guns simply because they like them, they collect them, they want to do some target shooting? I just don't understand the mentality. except to say this, Nick, I've noticed this over the years when I've talked to gun control advocates. Almost invariably, their real issue is not the guns. Their real issue are the people who own the guns. They just don't like people who own guns. And I saw that again and again and again. Yeah. The condescension, the ridicule, the offensive terms that are used to characterize these people, the people that own guns. It just bothered me so much. So, good for you, Grandma Thompson.
Amen to that. Now, I'll tell you, you're right about the tool thing. It is absolutely a necessity on a farm. For sure. Just like a chainsaw or just like a hammer or a sledge. Like, you have no reason to own a chainsaw that I'm aware of. Okay? You don't have your own firewood. You don't have a wood lot. You don't have any reason to own one. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't have the legal right to own one if you wanted to. But if you remember what the weather was like a year ago, this month, or actually in April it was, we had a horse go down in the mud and break its leg just below the hip. Now, there's no fixing that. And it was only a 7-year-old horse, a beautiful little mare. Now, if I hadn't had the means to dispose of that animal quickly, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to bludgeon it to death with a shovel? Am I supposed to call the vet, who could be up to 2 or 3 hours away, and let this animal either die of shock or writhe in agony? This is the part that the people who hate people who own guns don't realize. But more than that, there is also a fundamental reason, and Maxine Thompson does a really great job of showing you why we all need the right. Whether we want one or not, it's not the point. We should have the right to bear arms, so that when somebody does come through your dining room window at 3 o'clock in the morning and they're not listening to your appeals to tell them to go away, you've got some force behind you to make sure they don't hurt you, your family, or destroy your property.
Right. And in Philadelphia, if she had picked up the phone and called 911, it probably would have been 15 to 20 minutes before the cops even got there.
Well, I hate to bring it home, but what happened with the shooting in Wilno several years ago? That man went around and shot 3 or 4 women. I forget if it's 3 or I think it was 3. 3 women, one of which my wife knew. He used a hunting rifle, but that's not the point. If they'd have called 911, look, the police...
Well, and we'll know. If they'd have called 911, it could have been an hour before someone showed up.
Well, you never know, because there is a police station in Killaloe, but what if the patrol car is out in Renfrew?
Right.
Or out in Pembroke, or out in Whitney?
Right.
So now what?
Right.
You can't count on that.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
Last week, I'm just thinking, it was last weekend, Donald Trump was a keynote speaker at the NRA convention.
Oh, yes.
Down in the States. And I didn't hear his speech, so I don't know exactly what he said, but the day after, I was reading a lot of news reports ridiculing him for having raised the issue of knife violence and out-of-control violence in England, in London. And I read a number of comments from people in England, policy people, politicians, basically say, oh, we don't have a problem with knife violence. We don't have any problem with violence here. It's Donald Trump is stupid. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Okay. And the only thing I could think of was, well, then why is the mayor of London proposing knife control?
Calling knife registry.
It's sometimes I shake my head and I go, is the whole world really mad? Nick, are you and I the smartest people in the world?
Isn't that scary if we are?
Yeah, because I don't particularly think that, well, I'm speaking for myself, Nick, okay? I know I'm not particularly I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, no pun intended. It just astonishes me how idiotic people can be.
Well, look at Joseph. To solve the question of the IQ level in this room, neither one of us, even working together, could put a man on the moon. So that should tell you everything you need to know. But the mayor of the city of London even wants to have drop boxes where people can drop off their knives. Okay, so first the firearms, then the knives. What are people supposed to defend themselves with? Because the bobbies, even the bobbies, have to go to their squad car to get a firearm. Remember when that one soldier was beheaded by his raving lunatic in London?
Right. Yeah.
It took them 20 minutes to get there, and a female cop finally shot him after she went into the trunk to get her firearm instead of having it on her hip.
Right.
What if that had been the case in Toronto?
Yeah, but you see, that's the way they do things in England. And I don't have a problem with it.
If that's what they want to do.
Personally, I don't have a problem. Look, to each their own, and that goes for individuals, and it goes for communities as well. The thing that really got under my skin was how idiotic these people were, that they were running out and saying, we don't have a problem, at exactly the same time that their mayor is saying that the problem is so bad that we actually have to consider laws banning carrying knives, banning having knives in your pocket, and talking about a knife registry. Okay, that's the mayor of London. And when Donald Trump says there's problems with knives in London, everybody comes out of the woodwork and says, Donald Trump, you're an idiot. There's no problem with knives. And nobody, like, even just do a Google search, for pity's sake.
And it wasn't all that long ago.
I mean, it was just a few weeks ago. We talked about it on the show.
Absolutely. We thought it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it still is.
You know, that could have been, that actually could have been our stupid politicians segment for that particular week. Or maybe it was. Now, you see, I'm going to have to go back and listen to our old shows.
And we got to dig up another one for next week.
Well, we've got, speaking of stupid politicians.
There we go.
We've got...
I should have known you'd have this ready.
Yeah.
And this week's winner is?
Okay, guys, brace yourselves. My friends in the Ontario Conservative Party are not going to like what we're going to talk about now. But I just don't see how we can't talk about this, Nick, and call it really stupid. And that is getting rid of Tanya Granic Allen in the riding of Mississauga Centre.
She already won the candidacy.
She was already a candidate. Well, I'll let you take it away.
Well, basically, she already was the confirmed candidate carrying the Conservative banner into the next election. And Doug Ford owes his leadership position to Tanya's supporters because he was their number 2 choice. When you look at how far back they had to go to find some of these comments that they used to get rid of Tanya with, one of them was uttered when she was 19 years old. I mean, come on. What kind of standard are we holding politicians to? And first of all, it's not evenly applied. There are other politicians out there and candidates out there who have said far worse, and nobody raises an eyebrow to. So when Ford said, we got to get rid of her, that's not acceptable in the PC party, that's about the dumbest thing I think I've ever seen, because now all those supporters who supported Doug because Tanya didn't win feel completely betrayed.
Just from simply an electoral point of view, there's no way that this doesn't damage the Conservatives and damage Doug Ford personally, whether he was the person who pulled the trigger or not. Ultimately, like it or not, the buck stops with Doug.
That's right.
But the thing was, I watched the video. Her family is from the Balkan area, Croatia. Yeah. Part of her family anyway, and she was there visiting. I don't recall if it was relatives or there was a family function, and she gave a speech where she was talking to some people, and she had expressed her views in strong words about what she was led to believe was the government in Croatia talking about instituting same-sex marriage and introducing some very age-inappropriate material into their education curriculum. That was sort of the context.
Right.
And, when she said, when I hear that you guys are doing that here, it really makes me want to vomit.
Right.
Now, that's not hate speech. It's not directed at anybody. It's simply her saying, and I know...
I'm sick of this.
I know Tanya, actually, personally. She's a lovely person. Mm-hmm. She's got a great head on her shoulders. She's passionate, for sure. I don't have a problem with that. I think we need a little bit of passion in conservative circles in this country. Mm-hmm. So that's what she was talking about. There are things that children at 3 and 4 years old shouldn't be exposed to in terms of sexual content. Now, I understand that people may disagree with that, but to say that she was homophobic... I mean, it never even entered into the equation. Whether, people are gay or not, that's not what she was talking about. What people do in the privacy of their homes is their business.
That's right.
I don't need to know about it. It doesn't have to be a topic of public policy. Whether we're talking same-sex relationships or non-same-sex relationships, it's not something that ought to be out in the public square and everybody waving their placards around saying, this is what we do in bed. I mean, really, come on, guys. When my kid is in grade 3 or grade 4, grade 5, that's not the time to be talking about how to handle safe sex and things like that.
Well,
it's just age inappropriate.
It undermines the authority of the parents as well. Some kids can handle it, younger than others. Depends on the maturity of the child, and it depends on life experience. And the family knows that far better than any outside observer would. Most kids, they just want a simple answer. They don't need to know all the intricacies of how the human reproduction cycle works. They just want to know, where did my little baby brother come from?
What you just said about how human reproduction works,
yep,
the biological facts, that's perfectly fine. But that's not what we're talking about when we talk about the sexual components of this curriculum. Children ought to be taught the biological aspects of sexuality. It's just part of the human body.
That's right.
It's natural actions, etc. But that's not what they're teaching.
What we're doing in our culture, how kids are taught at a very early age that sex is huge. And if you're not having regular sex on a regular basis, or if you're not having sexual relations on a regular basis, there's something wrong with you. This whole idea about abstinence, this whole idea about monogamy, that's all ancient history. You got to be a sexual animal, to make yourself whole.
Human beings actually have the capacity to choose. We can choose not to indulge our physical appetites. Yes, we have instincts, but it's the essence of our humanity that we can actually control those instincts. We can say no to our drives. We can say, yes, I feel this way because I'm an animal, but no, I'm going to behave differently
like a human.
Because I'm a human.
Right.
When I hear people say it's wrong to tell people to control their sexual urges or to discipline their sexual behavior because that's not human, in fact, that's the quintessential behavior of a human being is to say no and to discipline themselves. And a really free person is the person who actually is able to control themselves.
Too many times we're being told that you don't have to listen to that little voice in your head saying, don't do this.
To come full circle, bring it back to the political and the decision to give Tanya Granic Allen the heave-ho in Ontario as a Conservative candidate. There is a constituency, and a growing constituency, that absolutely wants to hear this. And there's a whole lot of people that need to hear this. So it was not just wrong on a principled level. It was wrong for these guys to do this on a political, electoral level, a tactical level as well. Now, here's what's going to happen. The dislike of Kathleen Wynne and the Liberals is so deep and so wide right now in Ontario that it's virtually impossible for me to imagine any scenario where the Conservatives don't win. They would have won even with any kind of issues and awkwardness surrounding Tanya Granic Allen.
Right.
But they got rid of her. And I think that, in fact, they lose more votes from people who are more likely to donate to them, more likely to go out there and
volunteer,
knock on doors, volunteer to pound in signs, all of the things that elections are won and lost on, the organizational side, the hard work. These are the people that man the phones for hours and hours and hours, day in and day out, for 35 days, fighting to get you and your candidates elected. They're the people that are going to stay home. Not all of them, okay? But they're the people you alienate. And on balance, when I look at the people who are going to now decide to vote Conservative because Tanya Granic Allen is not there, and I look at the people who are frustrated, and this ignited a firestorm which has not dissipated yet. This has been going on for just the last 2 or 3 days. It's those people. There's going to be a significant number of them who are just throwing their hands up in frustration and saying, "You've betrayed us." Whether that's true or false, okay, I don't know. I'm not going to say, but there are a lot of people that feel that way, and they're just going to stay home and not vote. And so in the final analysis, I think on balance, you lose more votes than you gain. So that's why I thought that this was the right. It's not as funny.
No, it's not. And
Usually
it's
we
tragic.
laugh at stupid politicians. Here I'm not laughing. Here I'm saying, I'm just shaking my head and going, okay. This was a very pedestrian, superficial, knee-jerk reaction.
This is stepping out in front of a dump truck you didn't need to step out in front of.
Right. So that's stupid politicians for this segment.
All right. Trump has pulled the United States out of the Iran nuclear deal, and I couldn't be happier about it. Obama put this thing together a few years ago, and it was the deal cooked in hell. I mean, they gave Iran, trusting Iran to live up to its promises is very much like expecting Justin Trudeau to come out with an intelligence sentence. And I put those on the same level because you've got about an equal chance of either one of them happening. I mean, just unbelievable. You just can't trust Iran. They have this sense of manifest destiny, and they will do anything, say anything, promise anything to move further down that road. And it's all aimed at Israel. And anybody who doesn't understand that doesn't understand the mullahs in Iran who are actually running the country. You can get whoever you want to be president, but he has to bow down to these mullahs, and if he doesn't, then he's going to be out there with bad pajamas or whatever the last guy's name was, Ahmadinejad, look on the outside looking in. He's not going to be president of Iran for very long because that is a religious theocratic state with the dressings of some kind of democratic process thrown on top just to make everybody feel good.
Right.
So this whole Iran deal was a disaster from the word go, and Trump is exactly right to pull the United States out of it.
Right. Everybody is focused like laser beams on the nuclear issue. And last week, Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel gave an extended live press conference where he rolled out evidence of past Iran nuclear activity to demonstrate not that they're still developing nuclear weapons, but that the premise on which the accord was signed was false because the Iranians had been lying all along about their intentions and their activities. But I think it's a mistake to spend all of our time focusing on the nuclear issue because what was not included in this deal was Iran's ballistic missile program.
Yeah, no kidding.
Okay, and that's not just a threat to Israel. A number of the ballistic missiles that the Iranians have developed are in now the 2,000 kilometer plus range. That puts sections of central Russia in range of Iranian ballistic missiles.
Yep.
Sections of Eastern Europe.
Yep.
Every country in the Middle East, Afghanistan, India. The ballistic missile program actually was possibly the most immediate issue that had to be dealt with, and it was completely ignored in this accord, as was the question of chemical weapons, which we know is an issue in the Middle East right now, and biological weapons. So I don't know whether or not the Iranians were pursuing chemical or biological weapons, but the fact that it was not covered in this accord, in my judgment, is a fatal flaw, but especially the missiles. The missiles are a very, very big problem. It's nice to say we're not going to drop a nuclear warhead, fire a nuclear warhead into the heart of Jerusalem or Tel Aviv. But, when you can fire 500 missiles of a conventional type into the heart of Tel Aviv.
Or load them with sarin gas or who knows what.
Right. So, the damage is different, but it's widespread and many, many people still die. So the notion that, gosh, the Iranians are not going to build a nuclear weapon, I mean, it's so beyond the point. Again, I think to myself, why are we the only ones that get this? Well, clearly we're not because, Donald Trump has taken the Americans out of the deal now. Now, let me just say one more point on this, okay? From just simply a tactical point of view, it's worth noting that in the run-up to the decision that he announced just now to take the Americans out of the deal, there was a flurry a mad flurry of diplomatic activity trying to explore ways to bring correct those omissions, bring those weapon systems into the accord, so essentially to amend the accord.
Right.
That's still a possibility. Those discussions, to the best of my knowledge, are going on. So it's entirely possible that, in fact, rather than destroying the accord, the fact that the Americans, again, have called people's bluff, and they've said, you know what, we're not playing these games anymore, that in the end may end up actually with a completely different and strengthened accord. I don't know. I'm not predicting it because I don't have a whole lot of faith in the trustworthiness and the commitment of the Iranians to this.
It's the old story. If they'll lie about what they've done before, then they'll lie about what they want to do in the future. I mean, I just don't trust them. I'm not going to hand them the keys to the car and say, go get groceries and don't squeal the tires or burn off all that gas. I just don't trust them. So when Trump calls their bluff, like he did with North Korea, then in other words, this flurry of activity going on behind the scenes, whether it's legitimate or not, would never have happened. I mean, I remember when they released, was it $250 billion in Iranian frozen assets in the United States? And they were starting to ship airplanes filled with cash to Iran from the United States under Obama. Well, what the heck do you think they're going to spend that money on? I mean, nobody follows the dots. So that Trump, when he said, that's it, we're done, we're not playing this game anymore, all of a sudden the whole world sets up and goes, oh, my God. And then the great threat was, well, you're going to ostracize yourself on the world stage. You'll stand apart on the world. That's like telling Zdeno Chera, you're going to look out of place on the. So what?
Well, here's the thing that people in the world don't like to hear, especially here in Canada, that there's very little chance of the Americans ostracizing or losing their place on the world stage because they own the stage.
That's right. Not only are they the biggest player on it, they happen to own the one they're standing on.
Right. And I don't say that because they're bullies or anything like that. I'm saying that so much of the world is so dependent on American largesse, the open-heartedness and kindness of the Americans, their ingenuity. Even, I'm not saying that countries can't stand on their own 2 feet, but there are a whole lot of countries that cannot, and they depend on the United States, their defense, their security. Right here, even in Canada, to a very large degree, we depend on American military to provide us with a certain amount of security, and that's just the reality. So, at some point in time, I have a lot of sympathy, I have to tell you, for the Americans who just get tired of being bashed by people who are taking their money and taking their resources and living, frankly, beyond their means. Okay.
Denmark, Norway, and all these Scandinavian socialist meccas spend a lot of time, talking about how great they are.
And they are in their own way.
They are in their own way, you're right. But I wonder what they'd look like if the U.S. said, you know what, you're on your own. Defend yourself. What their defense budgets would have to become and what would happen to a lot of the socialist programs.
Well, they wouldn't. Look, they don't
Same thing
really,
with Germany, same thing with a lot of other countries.
Right now, they don't feel that they have any real threats out there.
Tell that to Russia.
But, well, I think that that's a growing issue.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, the reality is that right now, there's no Warsaw Pact. There are no 5,000 tanks sitting on the border of West Germany and the border between East and West Germany, just waiting for the signal to invade Western Europe. I mean, the environment is very different. But to your point, Nick, even during those times, most of the countries in Western Europe did not contribute in a meaningful way to their own defense. And it was the Americans were really the bulwark of defense in Europe against an expansionist Soviet Union.
Yeah. Well, that's why I say that, look, the people are very fortunate. They don't. It's like biting the hand that feeds you. They have no idea what the world would look like if the Americans actually did take their bat and go home.
Okay, look, we're running up now here. It's about coming up close to 45 minutes we've been doing this, Nick.
Wow.
we're going to have to put off some of the
flies.
topics until next week.
I guess.
And speaking of next week, we're going to be live.
That's right.
Next Wednesday night, 9 to 11 Eastern time. And you got to call in. Our goal is to make the Combat Zone Canada's flagship conservative talk show.
That's right.
And when I say conservative
talk show,
we're Nick and I are very adamant about this, right, Nick? When we talk about conservative, we're not talking about the political parties.
No.
We're talking about conservatism.
Right.
Okay, just common sense values, sensible policy, people live and let live, a certain amount of self-reliance. I mean, we could tick off all of the boxes, but our goal is to make this Canada's flagship conservative talk show. So we really want to encourage people to mark their calendars, make a point of tuning in online on Wednesday nights from 9 to 11 and picking up the phone and calling.
We don't bite, and if we do, we don't bite hard. Unless you deserve it.
We could take as good as we give. So don't forget to send us your comments at thecombatzone.ca. That's comments, plural, at thecombatzone.ca. I guess that's pretty much it, Nick. Do you have anything else you want to say or add?
I'm looking forward to Wednesday. It'll be a lot of fun. It's going to be great going live and having you as co-host. Neither one of us really has control. It's a back and forth thing, which I really like. It's a lot of fun to banter back and forth. And I certainly hope that people will join us, tune in, and have some fun with us because, you can get down in the weeds real easy, but life is too short. Let's have a little fun while we're here.
Okay, we'll see you next time.
You bet.